There's a bit of an echo on my end.
You said we were supposed to turn our mics off even when we're doing our
Does anyone have
computer audio's turned up,
TV,
Robert?
any other audio on?
I have my computer audio on.
And your phone?
No. Again, that's better. There's no echo now. Okay, so it's 5:31, and this is the May 18th meeting of the Architectural Advisory Committee. Please silence all cell phones or pagers. Planning Director, please give roll call.
Certainly. Member Thompson?
Here.
Member Walsh? Member Walsh?
We can't hear you, John.
Here.
Member Paline?
Here.
Member McCoy is excused. Member Lockyer?
Here.
Member Dozy?
Here?
Vice Chair Rotman?
Here.
And Chair Jagway has been excused. We have a quorum.
No, we have the staff report on the posting of the agenda.
Yes, Vice Chair Rotman and committee members, this agenda was published outside of City Hall on Thursday, May 14th, and posted on the city's website in accordance with policy. This meeting has been posted in accordance with state law. Thank you.
Do we have any revisions to the agenda?
No.
If not, we have a motion to accept.
Motion to accept.
Second,
Second.
we have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I think there are no nay votes. Since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that's within this committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time the item is presented. If you want to speak on an item not on today's agenda, you may speak now. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Is there anybody who wants to comment on an item that is not on today's agenda? Do we have anyone, David?
No, Mr. Vice Chair. We will have our applicants speak at the time of their item.
Okay, then we'll move on. We'll move on to the meeting notes from the last meeting, which was April 20th, 2020. Do we have any revisions? If not, do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, that has passed. Now we will move on to agenda item number 2 under unfinished business, and that is for Roosevelt LP for conditional use permit and a major architectural application for the construction of a 3,452 square foot drive-through restaurant and retail store on a vacant pad site at the Sunrise Square Shopping Center, located at 1755 North Sunrise Way. May we have the staff report?
Thank you, Vice Chair. So if you could see the slides that are before you, the AAC had reviewed this project on April 20th, 2020, and it was favorably received. However, there were some suggestions for revisions to specific parts of the plan, and I'll go over those in just a second. So one of the items that the AAC requested was that a shade structure or pergola over the outdoor patio seating area be added. How do you turn this on? There we go. Also to remove one parking space adjacent to the trash enclosure to increase the landscape island. Remove one parking space adjacent to the outdoor patio seating area to increase the overall square footage of the outdoor patio. The AAC to review the landscape plan, and the AAC to make recommendations for the screen wall design along the street frontage. So if you could see the slides that are before you, the applicant has resubmitted a new elevation or 3D drawing. Is this not working now? There we go. Okay. So what they're proposing is to add a new shade structure that will come off of the northeast corner of the property. You can see it here. It's made of metal, so it's an extension of the sort of eyebrow that will go over top of the entranceway. And what I'd like to do is the next slide is the previously approved. And you'll notice also in the design that they've wrapped the wooden portion of the area above the front door around the corner, so it's on the side that faces Sunrise Way. So I'll go back one slide so you'll see how they have wrapped this element around where the new patio is going to be. The AAC also asked for a slide showing what the design of the building is when you come up the street from Vistacino. So this is looking from the corner of Vistacino at the Wells Fargo on the left-hand side and then the proposed new building on the right-hand side. I'd also like to draw your attention, the AAC had questions about the wall that is going to be, that will shield the queuing or the drive-through lane. You'll notice that they're now looking to berm part of the wall so you can landscape it, and then a portion of the masonry wall would be above the berm area. One of the other AAC items that was requested was a cross-section of how the building relates to the Wells Fargo. And you have this in your packet, sheet number A202, and you'll see that it is 23 feet tall, and the portion of Wells Fargo was at 24, and then the top peak of Wells Fargo is 29. So it is in somewhat proportion to the Wells Fargo building that is adjacent to it. You also see the cross-section showing the height of the building with the parapets and then some HVAC units that are screened from view. So the next slide has the building elevation showing how the new metal canopy will go over top of the patio area. And in your packet, there is a cut sheet of what they're proposing the roof of the canopy to be. In the material board, it shows that they're going to use a fabric awning and a system of cables to provide the shade above the patio cover. And we'll get that into just a minute, but I wanted to mention that the metal patio cover will have shading to help keep the patio cool. So as we go on, there's some more slides of the elevations. The material board at the bottom right is the awning, so it's a sort of a tan awning fabric that will be used. Moving on to the landscape plan, you'll see that they've added planters around the outdoor patio, which is on the bottom of the slide. You'll see where the entrance into the new restaurant unit will be. So they've softened it. They've eliminated one of the parking spaces, softened it with the plants that will go around it, and also the wall that wraps around the building. So it goes along Sunrise and then wraps around the corner so that it's shielding the drive-through area. So landscaping hasn't really changed from when you saw it at last, other than adding the patio area, and then also at the top of the slide next to the trash enclosure, they've widened that and made it bigger in order to allow a tree to grow with more land, more ground to make it survive. So in your packet, there are additional floor plans. That hasn't changed, other than this is showing where the metal canopy and the outdoor patio will go. So they eliminated one of the parking spaces to make the outdoor patio larger. And this is a roof plan, and you can see how the framing of the patio cover will be. And this is a slide showing the trash enclosure and the width. The one parking space was eliminated, and making one of the other spaces, the island, larger for a new tree to be planted. So this is an aerial photograph, once again, showing that there is a wall that runs along the Sunrise from the entrance into the shopping center down along Sunrise that we discussed that is sort of a combination wall between a stucco and a metal. They're proposing to rebuild that wall so that it's consistent the whole way down from that driveway down to around the corner of the new building. What else do we have here? The circulation, which hasn't changed, and then there are some photographs showing current condition. So this is the wall that they're looking to change and make it consistent with the rest of the new wall that they'll be building to shield the parking lot. So Chair, as I mentioned, or Vice Chair, there is a series of cut sheets that are in your packet that shows how they're going to construct this, the covering above the patio. So that concludes my report, and the applicant is available to be called whenever you're prepared. Robert, you need to turn your mic on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Without a doubt. Yeah, thank you, Glenn. Do we have any questions for staff?
I have a question, Glenn. And this is a separate actual ownership parcel, is that correct?
Yes, so they're, actually, I'm not quite sure how the ownership is. If it's a lease from the underlying owner, I think the underlying shopping center will own the lot.
Okay. And the reason I asked that is that we had some discussion about blending the landscape into the building next door. So I didn't know if the property line created a boundary that could not be crossed with landscape, or if it's possible to do that.
After your meeting, that we had a discussion, I had a discussion with the architect, and he may want to respond to that more than what I can.
Any other questions? Glenn, I have a question for you. So along Sunrise, there's a green belt between the sidewalk and the curb. It's kind of an elongated triangle. And on their rendering, which is, let's see here, sheet REO2, it shows some nice landscaping and some boulders and that sort of thing in that little green belt area. And the reality is they have some boulders there and some grasses. And so is it appropriate that we have them include the landscaping of that green belt as part of this project?
Yes, it is their responsibility to maintain that area between the curb and the sidewalk and their property. Okay,
all right. It does not show up on their landscape plan. And I think it's something.
Right, it does not. And I looked at the streetscape, and there are some boulders, as you say, and some grasses that don't really relate to any of the landscaping that they're proposing. So I would assume that they would remove that, put down some DG, and add plants that would be appropriate.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions for staff? If not, is the applicant present? Okay.
Yes, we're going to call him just now.
Okay, so you give us your name and address. Tell us about your project. You have 10 and 2 minutes of rebuttal.
Not on yet.
All right.
Hi, Ken. This is David Newell. I'm at the Architectural Advisory Committee. You are live at the meeting, and you can make your presentation now to the committee. They are listening.
Hello, this is Ken McKinley with McKinley & Black Architects. Good evening, Chair and committee members. Glenn did a great job, as always, presenting the changes to the project. The 2 stalls that were removed and the expansion of the patio area and the new tree area as well as wrapping the screen wall around the drive-through, the bermed aspect of the landscape that will be added, the new shade structure. And I more than welcome to answer any other questions you might have that I can help you out with.
At this time, we ask for any public comments. Do we have any?
No, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, so then we'll conclude that. So does the committee have any questions for the applicant?
I do.
Member Lockyer?
Mm-hmm. So along the plan view here, particularly the landscape plan, it doesn't quite look successful to me in screening the drive-through area or the drive-through window or the headlights with the height of that wall the way it is and the minimal height of that berm that's been added. And then particularly with some of the plantings that are added there, it's like a 8-inch tall lantana growing in front of that wall. So I'm wondering why those plant materials and those choices, including the fruitless olives also.
Actually, we do have we have the landscape architect available. Maybe we could either save his comments for after me, or we can get him on now, and vice versa. He'd probably be better addressed. As far as the screen wall, goes, we're proposing a 4-foot high wall, and then the berm would go up to a height such that we're not going to create some kind of over 30-inch kind of drop off on the other side. So the idea was to screen at least 2/3 of that wall on the street side. But 4 feet should be adequate to screen the headlights.
Mm. Okay. Hey, how about the architecture? You got a couple of questions. Are you able to answer questions related to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Maybe just save the landscape questions. Specific plant material questions are not my forte.
So on the rendering, and then give me 1 second here.
So Vice Chair, if we could maybe ask the architectural questions to the architect, then we can then call the landscape architect if you'd like.
Okay.
Is A201 reflecting the most current elevations? Because it doesn't look like it is.
A201.
Or maybe the first page on this? Dated January 13th.
Well, it does reflect, yes, it reflects the current proposal with the shade structure and the screen. Well, the screen wall is indicated there. The landscape plan would be a better place to catch that. But yes, so it is current.
Mm-hmm. But they both have the same date on them, so I was having trouble figuring out which one's current.
I'm sorry, there's a revision date in the box left of the name. That may be why it's confusing. Just 507.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I think I've got it. The first sheet here, the east elevation, there's something that looks kind of odd to me, which is that floating wood pediment above the added shade structure. And I'm wondering why on that east elevation, so for instance, on the north elevation, it kind of makes sense that it doesn't return all the way to the ground plane because there's glazing there where that occurs. Where there's wall underneath it, it's sort of a top-heavy feeling structure without that wood projected plane returning down to the ground. And it appears that on the east elevation, somebody felt the same way about that and brought it all the way to the ground, but not on the north or the northern end of that east elevation. Am I making sense here? It's better viewed on a rendering also, where it really jumps out at me. And that's the second sheet of the presentation, first rendering. It's an odd-looking thing there.
So maybe I explain you bring up a good point. I mean, I see what you're saying, and I actually don't know that we couldn't bring that down. It was just didn't have the width that the other side of the east elevation did on the south to kind of bring that down. But the reason we wrapped the corner in this iteration was really part of the working through how to work this trellis structure so that it sat over the entire patio and was more or less centered on the patio. When we take that back to the building, the previous iteration, what you saw last time, had a centered kind of a canopy that sat within plaster walls, bookended, and it was off-center from the patio structure, which was really awkward when we tried to sawtooth it back, and it made a lot more sense to us to slide it over so that the shade structure centered on that wood element. And so we wrapped the corner, similar to what we did on the southerly side of the east elevation, east elevation. But I do see it does feel a little heavier because of the wood, as opposed to, say, on the south elevation where we have a cantilever, but it's plaster. We could drop that down. We were trying to engage that trellis like we talked about last time, wrap it back and tie it into the main building, but we could still do that with the wood portion dropping down. Try that. See how that works.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not right now.
So I have a question. So on sheet A202, which has got the building elevation in relation to the Wells Fargo as well as the building section, and on the section, it shows the roof at about 13.6, maybe up to 14 feet. And you show HVAC units on that. And on the elevation below, it shows, it looks like two different levels of where you have rooftop units. Do you have a second roof somewhere that's higher than what's drawn in the section?
No, I apologize. When the larger section was drawn, I didn't notice that we hadn't updated that the section cut on the lower elevation. We had originally drawn the comparison for the last meeting, and when we drew the section this time around, we didn't update that dash section cut on the other drawing. I think it's just, I apologize, it's a mistake. So as far as section cuts go, look at the larger view. It actually slopes a different direction. I noticed just before the meeting as well. So I apologize for that. But the intent, you're just getting back to, yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The intent, again, when we worked through the larger section after the comments about heights and things, we looked at all the Starbucks layouts, the retail layouts, and we kind of came up with what we thought was the minimum section that would work in the rear portion of the building at the lower end of the slope, and then set the deck. And as is typical with most of these kind of 60-foot deep type shop buildings, to screen a typical rooftop unit, at least 90% of them, we needed about a 19-foot parapet, which is what we're showing. There is some flexibility, certainly with the higher parapets. If you look at the north elevation, we have three levels. We have the 19-foot, then we step it up once, and then step it up to the highest to 23. But we could make those steps instead of 2-foot steps. We could drop those down to maybe 1-foot steps and cut the overall height down from 23 to 21, and that could still work. We're kind of set on that 19 feet, though. That's the one we're most concerned about.
Well, I'd really like to see it drop down as much as possible. I think actually it will help with a lot of the proportions, especially of the sign bandage, the sign band areas with wood and that sort of thing. I think it'll bring the scale of the building down and actually will relate better to the Wells Fargo. So I'm glad to hear that you're open to that. And then I have a landscape question. So if anybody else has a question for the architect, please let me know. No? Why don't we bring the landscape architect then on?
Okay, we'll call him now.
Okay.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Oops.
Robert, when you say dropping the height of the architecture, I don't mind, save it for our discussion.
Okay. Doesn't ring. You have to push the green button.
Thank you for calling Cumming, Purley and Associates. If you know your party's extension.
This is Robert Curley.
Hi, Robert. This is David with the Architectural Advisory Committee. You are live with the committee members, and you can make a presentation, and they have some questions for you as well.
Good evening, gentlemen. I have been listening, and I did hear the comment. Ken did a great job presenting. I can address your comments in advance of you asking them from what you said to Ken, or you can go ahead and ask them to me directly, and I'll respond appropriately.
Okay. Member Lockyer, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. And I think I've since added to that. So the plant material, especially along the main street, Sunrise, is kind of, I was going to say it's low, and it's not doing much to screen the building, the drive-through window, or the headlights, and it's actually relatively uninteresting. So by that I mean the gold lantana, the Texas Ranger as a silvery hedge, I think is a nice backdrop, but the Red Bird of Paradise, it's just relatively uninteresting one. So before you comment on that, I'm wondering about the tree choices also. So if I look at the street view here and I march down the street, the tree choices of the fruitless olive just seem kind of from out in left field and not consistent with the plant material that's currently existing at this shopping center. I would argue that the desert willow is probably the same, just not seen anywhere else, I believe. So can you comment on those two items?
Well, I can. Thank you very much. First of all, the plant palette meets today's required code for under Welo, Woolco's, Calgreen. The center is aged and doesn't meet that. And also the Bank of America next door, I think it's Bank of America or Wells Fargo, does not meet that either, not even close with all the turf it has. So we chose a plant palette that is consistent with the current running mandate we have for water use reduction. So that's why the plant material choices. The screen wall in itself will screen out the headlights. We accented that from the back of the drive-through as the head-in parking coming from the west. We run the leucophyllum hedge, which gets a flower, the lavender flower, all the way around, but we stopped it short at the curve right where the cars will turn to come up to the pickup window because the planter was going to get too narrow with that large 4-foot hedge in there to have any kind of other detailed plant material. Where we have on the corner, we relocated 2 palms on that corner. We added in lantana. We added in the red bird of paradise. We have a cluster of agave blue glows. We have festuca ovida glauca. We have quite a few different materials in there spread out. We like materials to grow to their full size. Out in the desert, of course, as you know, it looks much better when plants grow to their natural size and shape and they're not pruned overly. And that's the goal of this design. That's what I think gives it the interest, is that every plant stands on its own and gives the color, texture, and form of its natural shape that we want to achieve.
And the deviation from the tree species from anything else that's there on that site currently?
They don't meet the water requirement.
So an olive and okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Anybody else?
I have a question. This is Tom Dosey. What is the height of the fan palms that are being relocated? It shows
you know what? I have to go back to a street view to find that. I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head. I'm sorry about that.
I mean, because I know there's some really tall ones out there, but I don't even know if they'd be worth moving. If it's the really tall ones, they're probably out of scale with the overall design there. So, and then I guess I had another question. Is it possible that your proposed landscape planter that goes along the berm could turn and connect into the planting area adjacent to the Wells Fargo building? So in other words, go west up your drive aisle and then kind of turn to the left, cross the property line. So now there's a continuous planter that, rather than bringing their lawn area so much into the project, bring this planter into the front of the building.
I can't cross the property line. I can't do landscape on their property. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that was our question to staff, if it was a truly separate property or if it's managed through the center as,
And the response was that it's a part of this project and should be designed and incorporated into this project's landscape.
Right. Sometimes there can be separate parcels within a development, but the landscape flows across those properties.
Yeah, through the common space, through the public right-of-way, out to the street. Your comment?
Well, I understood the comment when it was written the first time, and that's why we brought the turf in, trying to make it undulate in and not make it a hard edge. We wanted to soften it so it looked like everything was always planned that way. Without going into the bank property, redesigning all their irrigation, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the reason behind that. I think it would almost look more, well, I guess it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You could take it and mirror that line across and bring a little bit of shrubbery and a little bit of decomposed granite into their property, or just make some of their turf twist in and out of our property. It's almost the same negative space either way you look at it.
Okay, thank
Tom, were you talking about out at the street?
I would up along closer to the Wells Fargo building. If you look at the front of their building, there's a planter area adjacent to their building with some agaves, and that their landscaping adjacent to their building came across and flowed down along the drive aisle, and tied into their planter.
Well, that's kind of what we did.
Right, I see, yeah, where you brought the lawn.
So when we get closer to their building, the shrub areas come in contact with each other. And as you go along the north side of their building, that becomes a more desert scape than, their big turf area does. So we tried to blend the two and flow that turf line around. So it looked like it all just blended right through as it wrapped from going north to going east.
Right, just below where it says 24-inch berm, we can see that. Okay. And again, could you reiterate the leucophyllum hedge, you stopped it on the curve and did not want to continue it further north because you felt at that point it screened enough of the headlights, or?
No, let me rephrase that for you so it's clear. The wall in that section is really your headlight screen. It's 100% because it's so tall. The hedge stopped. Right. I use the hedge to soften the wall, and when it's on top of the berm, it'll actually get higher than the wall and come back down. So it's going to start rolling back down as it comes along the front of the building there. But then if I ran that hedge all along, all the other material would become pushed and become smaller. And I need to use smaller and smaller material, and I couldn't get the density in more interesting plant material. It'd become a hedge and one plant, where I wanted to have something a little more interesting that was allowed to grow to its full size.
Okay. And then you kind of picked up the cassias where the leucophyllums ended off.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I have a question. So you may have heard from earlier questions about the green belt along the curb, and currently it's got some between the curb and the sidewalk as it kind of curves in right at your property. Currently there's some rocks and some grasses there, and in your rendering you show some plant material which I think ties in better with what you're proposing for the landscaping. Are you it doesn't show up on your landscape plan, but is that something that you're going to include?
That would be a condition. It's in the public right-of-way. It wasn't within the scope at this time for the building itself, but if there's a requirement to do that, it's not a problem at all. It's a small area.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have a question? If not, that'll conclude our questions for the applicant, and we'll begin our discussion of the committee. John Walsh, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, the before and after from the first time we saw it with the extended canopy makes a big difference. It looks like a habitable, pleasant space, and it certainly didn't before. For all of the fact that that's a pretty hard-edged intersection and existing parking lot. So that will go a long way toward improving the building's appearance. I was confused when I looked at the shade structure, the cut sheet, at first because some of the panels don't complete the full bay. And I thought, oh, these are, clever things where they can pull them across according to the sun or whatever. But then I kind of think, no, it's just, they just arbitrarily don't cover the full thing. So I'm not really sure about the rhyme or reason of that, but they seem experienced with this type of product. It seems to be their go-to solution because other Starbucks have used it. So I'm going to make an assumption and a leap of faith that the fact that it's canvas, it will suffice for what they need in terms of longevity.
Okay. Member Poline?
No, I think I really like how they integrated the canopy into the building. I tend to agree, Sean, that wooden piece does float a little bit and could be better. The only thing I was kind of worried about is if you do take it down that end, and it'll be that facade will be completely symmetrical, which I'm not thrilled with, but maybe they can pull it back a little bit and treat it differently. I think the berming of the landscape along the wall is going to provide a good cover for headlights, and it seems to integrate well with the lawn next. So I'm good.
Okay. Member Thompson.
I kind of agree with Sean. I think that wood on that one part should come down. It just kind of looks like it's kind of heavy and floating up there. It just doesn't look quite right to me. But otherwise, I think it looks like a good project.
Okay. Member Josie.
I think if one of our goals is to have a little more screening on the drive-through, I would recommend some additional olive trees be placed along the berm, kind of wrapping around the corner. Palms aren't going to give us any type of screening there, but 24-inch box olive trees spaced as far as they have apart is not going to give us much density. So that would be my recommendation. And also that the tree increased in size from 24-inch box to 36-inch box. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Member Sean.
Yep. So I think the landscape looks pretty mundane and kind of not so much of an improvement from what's there now. So I would recommend that they've got to add some more species and some things of height and character, particularly around where the palm trees were placed and along the frontage of Sunrise. The low lantana and some of the other plants like the redbird of paradise, I think is not an improvement from what's there. And the response of they selected things from a palette that meets the WUCOL's water requirements. Doesn't seem like enough of a reason not to select some other interesting plants or create an attractive landscape. And I agree with Tom, upsizing and increasing the frequency of the olives. However, I think another tree could have been chosen. Not sure the 2 or 3 new olives is going to be the equivalent. It starts to kind of not make sense to me as selecting another tree that maybe requires a bit more water, like some of the ones that are in keeping with what's there already at the shopping center. 1 or 2 of those versus a total of 4 olives or 6 olives doesn't quite make sense to me. But adding trees along Sunrise, I think, helps screen the drive-through window, the effect of the headlights on other cars and bouncing off the building and what the things we're trying to screen there. So I think screening that whole entire driveway, sure, the headlights won't be seen directly because of the wall height and the berm and some of the planting. I just think this landscape could do a little bit better job to be both attractive and improving the quality of what's there now. The architecture, yeah, I think it could stand some improvement if that wooden element on the corner there came all the way down, both on the north side and the east side at the north end. And that's about it.
Well, I think I'm in agreement about the landscaping, that it could be enhanced from what's currently being presented. I also think we should include as a condition that they landscape the area between the sidewalk and the curb. And my comments about the height of the building, again, I'm trying to keep it in mind in relationship to the form of the Wells Fargo, and this building sits quite a bit farther forward, so it's really going to be much more prominent. It seems a little vertical for a very horizontal center, and I think by lowering some of those parapets, which are currently now shown at 9.5 feet, would help the overall look of the project. So,
Robert, can we give them a height? Can we just go back to that section and look at that for a minute? They don't wrestle around with it. They show a top of mechanical equipment and what appears to be another parapet in there at 19 feet.
Right, that looks like it's the one that needs to screen, the height that needs to screen the actual equipment.
Yep, and then 23 feet, so it's a 4-foot difference there. Are we asking them to reduce the height by 4 feet?
No, he mentioned 1 to 2 feet, and I think 18 inches to 2 feet would help a lot.
Okay. Sounds good to me too.
So do we have a motion, or is there any other, I should ask if there's any more discussion. If not, we have a motion. Okay, I'll move. Approve with the conditions, and we'll leave it up to staff, I guess, to enhance the landscape. Sorry?
Yes, I have the conditions that landscape the area between the curb and the sidewalk, landscape to be enhanced along Sunrise, add olive trees around the frontage. It could be 3 to 4 trees. Upsize the trees to 36-inch boxes. The wood element brought down to ground on the east and north corner, and lower the parapet height to 21 feet.
Okay.
Did I hear like variety in the species there and trading some of those out for other material?
Yes, I'll include variety in the landscaping.
And I would agree with that. They could some other type of understory tree.
Maybe to the 4 or 5 foot mark, so like yucca or something of the like that gets some actual height to it and interest.
Oh, you mean in terms of the shrub or accent plants?
Yeah, well, I hate to not give them any direction, but maybe we have to.
Yeah, so I think, Glenn, what we're asking for is two different items. One is some additional trees, the background for some screening and some density, and then I think what Sean is saying, some more variety in the accent plants on the berm for interest.
Right. I got the direction. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's my. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No? Great. Thank you very much. We'll move on to new business. Item number 3, Las Palmas Medical Plaza for a minor architectural review for a phased renovation of all campus planter areas, including the parking lot located at 555 East Tachiva Drive. Daphne, we have a report.
Thank you, Vice Chair. What I'll do in this report is the Las Palmas Medical Plaza is a large 4-acre site, and they're looking to renovate all of the landscaping on the property. So they've broken it down into different phases. And in the first slide, we have the 5-phase plan showing areas that are along Mira Leste is phase 1. Phase 2 is Tachiva, along the street of Tachiva with, the hospitals across the street. 3 is the interior courtyards. 4 is the parking lot. And 5 is the alley, which they're calling is the rear property line that fronts along the street that abuts the Movie Colony neighborhood. So what we'll do is we'll go through each of these individually and discuss them. So in your packet, there's a series of the larger scale plans showing the master streetscape plan and the plants overall that they're going to do. And then we're going to break it down. There's a demolition plan showing the trees that will remain. So there are a lot of mature trees that have reached the age where they require a lot of maintenance, and the property owner wishes to remove several of these trees, and the demolition plan that is D1-0 shows the trees that are remaining. And I know it's kind of difficult. The trees that are sort of clouded or ghosted is the ones that will be removed. They also include a lighting plan, and the lighting plan is proposed as just the lights that are along Tachiva and Mira Leste. There are currently lights that are in the parking lot, and those will stay the same. So there's no real changes to the parking lot itself. So to go into the different phases, and Vice Chair, when you start discussing this, you may want to break it down into these different areas, because then you can focus on each of these streetscapes. So the first streetscape in the photograph, you'll see is along Mir Leste, and there are trees that are currently there, and they're looking to remove several of these trees. Let me get the number here. So they're proposing to remove 7 bottle trees and 2 African sumac trees, as well as the other understory plantings, and they're going to replace them with 4 mesquites, and that's what this plan is showing here, are the mesquites. And the other understory plants. The mesquites are going to be 24-inch box and 2 new fan palms. They're using agave, desert spoon, green carpet lantana, and yellow bells. And they're going to use throughout the site a 2 to 4 inch diameter mortar and cobblestone, along with a 2-inch minimum layer of Mojave Gold, decomposed granite and boulders and rubble. So as I mentioned, they're going to phase this plan, and this is the first phase within the first month of when they are ready to start. So in this drawing, you'll see that they are planting 4 trees along the streetscape. Staff is recommending that they do a 1-for-1 replacement and add 2 additional shade trees along via Mir Leste. So moving on to the second phase, this is the Tachiva Drive. This is the most visible streetscape that would go along across the street from the hospital. So they're looking to remove several trees along this area. They're removing 14 jacaranda trees and bottle trees to replace with 5 mesquite and 6 fruitless olives. The understory is a little bit more colorful with bougainvillea, little john, Mexican tree grass, and then yellow bells. They are adding mounding in several places, 18 inches high, to break up the area. And I have some photographs that show what it looks like now. As you can see, it's just basically dirt with some trees that are in pretty bad shape, those jacaranda trees. So they'll be removing the ones that are in not too good shape, as you can see in these photographs. So moving on to phase 3, that's the inner courtyards. The inner courtyards have a variety of raised planter beds. There are red brick planter beds, arches, stone fountains that are not non-functional now. This landscape is currently overgrown and doesn't have a common theme. So in the one 3D rendering, it shows what it looks like at the top and then what they're proposing to replace it with. So the bottom photograph shows the proposed yucca and the trailing rosemary and the other flowering sweet memory trees that their shrubs are proposing to plant. And then you have detailed landscape plans showing what each plant will go in each area. So this also includes the entry. There's a guardhouse or a gatehouse that enters into the driveway that goes to the parking lot. The existing date palms will remain, and they'll replace the understory with new colorful plants. And there are some photographs of what this area looks like, showing how the planter beds are a little bit, there's really not a common theme. There's some Mexican bird, a paradise, some bougainvillea that is not looking that healthy. So moving on to the parking lot, which is at the back of the property. Currently, the parking lot has islands that have been planted with low shrubs. So obviously, they have a shade requirement that they need to meet. And this current situation does not provide shade. So they're looking to add all the trees in the planter areas and then add some understory other plants to soften and make the islands look much better than they do now. And then the last phase is the alley, they're calling, which is there's a pathway that runs between the back parking lot and Tachiva, and they're looking to add this type of landscaping. There's some sweet memory and other trailing rosemary and other shrubs that they'll add. And then the area between the street in the movie colony neighborhood and the wall of the parking lot, they're looking to add other colorful plants. And here they're leaving the trees that are there. The jacarandas will remain. So, Chair, that concludes my report. as I mentioned, staff is recommending that trees be replaced along Via Marileste, and the applicant is available to be called whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, do we have any?
I have one question. Could you go back to the phasing map, please?
So in your packet, the phasing map is the very first 11 by 17 sheet. So that's, I'll get to that in just a second. There we go.
So Tachiva is actually even though it's the longer frontage, is the second phase of the project.
Right, Tachiva is the second phase. Oh, I'm sorry. So in the staff report, it lists, if you're interested in what the timing is, in the staff report, at the end of each of the paragraph, it lists Marileste is the first month, Tachiva is 1 to 2 months out, and interior courtyards are 1 to 2 months out. The parking lot is the 4 months out is the last thing to do, and then the alley is 2 months out.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Glenn, I just had a question for clarification. On page 1 of the staff report, you recommend approval with the condition trees removed along the street frontages to be replaced at a 1-to-1 ratio. And then further in the staff report, when you talk about phase 1, you mentioned the same thing, that you want to add 2 additional trees. In phase 2, they have originally, I think it's 14 trees, and they're replacing them with 11. Do staff want that to be a 1-to-1 as well?
Right, that's correct. So, and maybe the architect can describe, there may be enough trees that they're planting in the front that it does not need to be 1-to-1, but at least along Marileste, we would want it 1-to-1.
Okay. Any other questions?
Robert?
Yes. Don Walsh?
Glenn, help me on the scheduling of this thing. Are these phases, these periods of time to complete each phase, additive, or do they happen simultaneously?
Right. So I asked the applicant would have to answer that question. I posed that to the landscape architect, and when is the first month start? Does it start August 1st and then it goes till December, or so I'll have to have them answer that question. I can't tell you for sure.
And I guess to kind of cut to the chase there, it's when does the whole thing wrap?
The last item is the parking lot, and that says, 4 months out. So it would be like a 4-month process from whenever it would start.
Right.
Glenn, I have an additional question. In the master plan, they sometimes give choices. There's a symbol, and it could be one of 2 or 3 varieties. Do we know why they have not selected exactly which variety they would like?
That's correct. So in the master plan, it says like the trees could be a Chilean mesquite or a southern live oak. I took the very first one, and that's what was in the staff report. They may be able to explain as to which specific tree they're going to use, but they have that does occur in several of the plans.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to elaborate on that comment. I'm having trouble. Is anybody else having trouble reading this plan with the colored symbols versus the black and white symbols? I can't understand. Like everything recommended plan.
Right. Staff tried to make that as simple as possible by breaking it down into the phasing. And then in the staff report, it references what sheet goes with what phase, because that's a little bit hard to understand too. So, in Phase 1, it's sheets L2, LM1, and L-1.2, so you can look at those specifically.
The other thing, Glenn, is I'm missing half the presentation. The only planting plan I have is the overall LM 1.0. I kind of opted out of receiving that full package being hand delivered, and the only link I have is the one on the website, which is today's agenda and includes only that one plan. Maybe I'm SOL. Okay,
sorry.
We can move on.
Okay. When staff uploads the exhibits, they all should match. I'm not sure why. We're going to check and see why and I go and I check them every time our secretary sends them out. I always check the link to make sure that actually is working. So
yep.
We're going to look.
My apologies. I didn't click the second link on item 3's agenda. With the second link, yes, that's the exhibits. I apologize. It's all there.
Okay, yeah, because sometimes they're too large for our system to have all one exhibit list. We have to split them up.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Any other questions for staff? No, if not, we will proceed with, is the applicant present?
Yes, we're calling him now.
Thank you.
To let you know that we are live and you can make the presentation on the Las Palmas Medical Plaza. You have up to 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm watching it now. So.
Yes, we're calling him now.
I'm on the line.
He needs to turn his.
You'll just need to turn yours on. You're live with the committee, so you can begin the comment.
Okay. So I think what was explained by staff certainly addressed all the issues.
We are live and you can make the presentation on the Las Palmas Medical Plaza.
May I interrupt?
I'm watching it now. So.
Can you turn the volume down, Chris, please?
Okay, hold on one second.
On the line. You'll just need to turn yours on. You're live with the committee, so we can begin comment.
Okay. So I think. Okay, I've got my screen turned off now. So. Hello.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay.
You mind
I saw the presentation that staff did, and I really don't have anything to add to that other than to note that I'm really the owner's rep here. I'm not the landscape architect, although I worked with the landscape architect, so I can generally answer your questions. The landscape architect is not available due to a family emergency. So, but I heard the question on the phasing. I need to mention that the phasing is what is anticipated. The times that you heard from Glenn, but it's also a matter of how the dollars are appropriated for this, and this is a publicly owned building by the Desert Healthcare district, and funding was I mean, it was set up in phases due to funding more than anything else. It's a very expensive project, as I'm sure you note, and they're hoping to do it in the phases that are outlined. The hope was that phase 1 and 2, which are the streetscapes, would be done. I know it shows them separate, but we're looking at doing those at the same time, and the other phases to follow in order as noted. But I noticed that when Glenn made the comments, he talked about 3 months, 4 months, 2 months, 1 month. I cannot say that those are hard and fast, but 1 and 2 again we're trying to do at the same time. So I wanted to mention that. And I heard the comment about the trees in the parking lot. The fact that on the master plan it shows three species. The intent was that whichever species is chosen, it was really more on an availability issue and a cost issue. But those three were intended, and we were asked that those three types be approved with the option to go to whichever one works out best from availability and cost. They would certainly be all the same species. We wouldn't mix the three. So if we choose the tipus, they would all be that. So I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like me to comment on or not.
Okay. Well, thank you. We're going to ask if there's any public comments before we have questions for you. So, David, is there anybody from the public wanting to speak?
No, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, so then we'll open it up to questions for the applicant. Anybody have questions? No?
Thinking.
Member Lockyer? You have to unmute. There you go.
Just looking at the lighting plan here, sheet L40. I don't know that I see a lot of lighting. Am I missing something? In other words, 2 along the east.
Right. I posed this question to the landscape architect, and the lighting is limited to just the landscape lighting along the streetscapes, and then the lighting that's within the parking lot. And obviously, there's lighting in the courtyards from the building itself.
That's correct.
Why is that? That there's a very minimal landscape.
Chris, can you answer that question?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear it.
Sorry, the question was why so limited on the landscape lighting?
Well, the idea was that right now it does not have any, and the intent was to highlight the larger specimen trees, or really all of the trees around the streetscape. The building is closed at 6 o'clock. really didn't see any point in any additional lighting out in the parking lot area. And as was mentioned, the interior courtyard is already lit. So all of that type of lighting would be from the structure itself. So the really only areas that it seems to be appropriate was the major tree forms as they're outlined on the drawing, and it also means the existing not just the new trees, but also the existing major tree forms that are staying will also be uplit.
Okay. Any questions?
Chris, I have a question. It looks that the primary ground cover is going to be like a 3/8-inch decomposed granite. And then there's some cobble areas or rock areas, and those will actually be mortared in place versus like a loose cobble.
Yeah, those were, and I think those are at the entry areas off the street sidewalk.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And they're mortaring that in place for safety or just to give it a different appearance?
I think the intent was to try to keep those rocks from being thrown at the building or anybody else. That happens to be a walkway to and from an elementary school, and we wanted to kind of avoid the temptation if we could. So,
I kind of thought that might be the answer, but thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. That will conclude that, and we'll open it up for discussion. Let's start with Member Pauline.
I think overall, I think that, to me, this is a much needed improvement because that is a very sparse looking complex. And I think the palette they've chosen for the planting materials seem to really work together. And to me, it's up with staff's comments about making sure we replace tree for tree on both streets, because I think it would be pretty sparse if we didn't.
Okay. Member Dozy?
I liked the comment about bringing some organization to the site, and I think that the photo simulations show that and the selection of the plant material. I think the only concern, and maybe the applicant could address it, I'm just wondering, previously on some of these larger commercial projects, it seems that the decomposed granite or the 3/8 kind of just disappears after a while. And I don't know if it was a cost factor, but if they had considered maybe using a 3/4-inch rock rather than the decomposed granite.
Okay. Member Lockyer? No comments?
No.
Member Walsh?
Just kind of a couple observations. It is interesting. I mean, these are these sweeping setbacks on a commercial building, which you usually don't see. So they kind of carry with it an obligation that they really have to do something. And this is one of those things that seems like sort of just in the nick of time. A lot of the jacarandas just look sad and kind of, like they're due to be pulled out. In walking around, I think that you really get a sense of the relationship. The landscape on a building like this is a key driver in the building's appeal, it seems, and I'm sure in its value. So, yeah, I would certainly support this, and I think I would take the parking lot phase 4, and I'd probably bump it up to 1 because it's pretty barren, hot. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Member Thompson?
Yeah, I think it's a great improvement from what's currently there, and I think the courtyard areas particularly look nice compared to what's happening in the complex. Everything's so overgrown that I think it's going to be a vast improvement for the project and for the property. And it's including on Tachiva and on Via Miraleste, it's going to improve the curb appeal of the building quite a bit by removing all those dead trees and planting some nice new things. So I think it's going to look good.
Okay, thank you. And I'm in agreement with the comments so far. I would just say that I would also agree with staff's recommendation that we replace like for like in terms of number on the both for the trees on both Tachiva and on Miraleste. So do we have a motion, or is there more discussion? No. Anybody like to?
Just one question for Chris or for staff. I think with the way the existing site is, we want to make sure that they do some grading, particularly at the edge of the sidewalks, to bring that grade down if they're going to add in whatever, rock or ground cover material, so that it doesn't come out onto the paved areas.
Right, so that's hang on.
Yeah, they drop the existing grade along the.
Go ahead, Chris.
The city used to have a kind of a swale detail around the edges of the sidewalks, and we would certainly be happy to maintain that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You have a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval with the comments
I'll second.
included.
Would we like to read back on those comments?
Yes, please.
Right, so I have that the trees to be replaced for like, so that would be the trees along Via Miraleste and along Tachiva. There was also comment about the parking lot phasing be one of the recommendations, be one of the earlier ones, and that the swale detail be used along the edge so that material does not end up in the sidewalk, and that we use a 3/4 inch rock instead of decomposed granite. Anything else that I missed?
Could I make a comment on the trees, like for like? I would almost, some of the trees that they're removing are the narrow bottle trees, and if they're replacing them with a tree that gets a larger canopy or spread, it could end up actually being too many trees. So I would like to allow some discretion for the designers to review that.
Okay, that's noted. We can relay that to them.
Okay, yeah, you could work with them.
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second.
Member Thompson seconds. Do we have all those in favor? Please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No. Okay, so moved. Now to the new business, Mr. Nice Guy for a sign program application to install new signage on a multi-tenant building located at 1059 North Palm Canyon. Staff report, and we have the staff report.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. The applicant is requesting approval for a sign program to establish sign criteria for a multi-tenant building, commercial building located at 1059 North Palm Canyon Drive within the C1 zone. This is a photo of the elevation as it exists currently. There are 3 cabinet box signs that are no longer permitted per the Palm Springs zoning code. The cabinet box signs will be removed and replaced with 2 brand new signs. Originally, when I had written the report, I had understood that one of the cabinet box signs would remain. However, they will all be removed and replaced with brand new signage that complies with the Palm Springs zoning code. This is just an elevation that states linear frontage, the height that's allowed per the Palm Springs zoning code sign ordinance, and gives an idea of where the signs can be located on the building. Our first sign is for a cannabis dispensary called Mr. Nice Guy. This is actually going to be the Mr. Nice Guy Center. The proposed sign will be an illuminated channel letter sign at 13 square feet, which is in compliance with the sign ordinance. This is an elevation, a rendering of what and where the sign will be placed. Hair Salon Reed Brown will be the second sign on the building. The applicant will be able to go into more detail regarding this specific sign. However, it is an illuminated sign, an aluminum sign with push-through acrylic letters that are internally illuminated. This sign is also 13 square feet. And here's a rendering of where it would be located on the building. Staff finds that the sign program complies with the Palm Springs zoning code sign ordinance, and asks that the Architectural Advisory Committee recommend approval to the Planning Commission subject to the following conditions: that the proposed signs should be consistent with one another and incorporate the same colors, materials, and composition so that they're a little bit more cohesive. That concludes my staff report. The applicant is available for comments or questions.
Thank you, Alex. Do you have any questions for staff? Alex, would you just repeat on the Brown Reed? Is that a cabinet sign that they're proposing, the new one, or is it something different?
It's, when I spoke to the applicant, it originally appeared to be a cabinet sign, but it's how he described it, a light box with push-through letters. And he said that he could provide more detail on that one.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Is the applicant present then?
This is Tyler Curtis speaking.
Hi, Tyler. This is David with the Architectural Advisory Committee. You are live with the committee members, and you can make your presentation now.
I'm standing by and watching.
Is the applicant present then?
You can make your presentation now, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must be a couple seconds behind the live stream. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Yes, you are live.
Are we there?
Yeah, you're live, and you can make your presentation now.
This is Tyler Curtis speaking. David. Sorry, I'm not hearing anybody come back through on the phone. I apologize if I'm not here live right.
Yeah, you're live right now, so you can speak.
Okay, wonderful. How can I help you, gentlemen, with any questions on this design and submittal?
There were some questions about the cabinet sign for Reed Brown. Can you explain the details on that?
The Reed Brown sign is actually a push-through letter concept. The square concept in the design is their branded logo. They updated the design to improve the color combination. The lettering for Reed and Brown and the scissors will actually be pushed through acrylic with a
black vinyl surface piece, so it'll edge light around, giving an architectural element to the sign.
Okay. Is that the end of your presentation?
The ideal. Say again?
I was wondering if you had more to say. If not, we'll open it up to the public if there is anybody, and then we'll go to questions.
No, please, open up to the public. Any questions you have on it? What we're looking to do is just improve the architectural element and architectural design of the front, and open and to remove those old style light boxes with a more modern design and architectural elements in the two signs.
Okay. David, is there anybody from the public?
No one else wishing to speak, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Then do we have questions for the applicant?
I have a question. On the Mr. Nice Guy sign, it shows that it is a 5-inch return, yet on the the Reed Brown sign, it's a 3-inch return. So does that mean that these cabinets or enclosures are different thicknesses or widths?
Originally, the Reed Brown design is a push-through individual letter cabinet. It's going to not require as many LEDs, so keeping it a little bit thinner would allow for that 3-inch to disperse of light. The sign for Mr. Nice Guy is the original design here is a trim cap around the outside, so the entire face would light up, and we would require a little bit more distance to diffuse the light to avoid any hot spotting. 5 inches is a standard front lit channel letter conceptual design.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I have just one quick question. When I look at the elevation of the existing building and the proposed locations for the sign, to my eye anyway, the signs look a little high, and I'm wondering if there's and it shows that it was an equal distance, they were located equally above the canopy and then above the pediment and to the top of the pediment. Was there any other thought going into how those signs were located?
To equal on the vertical heights, you mean?
Yes, equal on the vertical height above the canopy.
Yeah, equal on the. We can raise them up higher if we would prefer to see it, but original concept is just to equally space them vertically to the area on the canopy space. If the proposed design needed to go higher for visibility, we could adjust that from street view. If needed to be raised up, we could.
Well, I think actually it might to be equal distance above the canopy and then below the pediment. So it would come down just about, 6 inches or 8 inches, whatever that is.
Correct, yes. If you look on the sign program where we mocked out, it shows equal distance vertical. The tenant sign that we included in here is specific to the two tenants, just to show a reference of mock-up. We would still have to submit for an individual sign application for the new tenant signs for each one through the city. This is just to give a mock-up design of what the two tenant signs optionally could go to based off of the sign program to be submitted.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? If not, thank you very much. We'll open it up for discussion of the committee members.
Oh, Robert, I do have one question. Which door is actually the entrance for the salon? There's 3 doors showing on the front.
They have two-door, I believe it's the 1063. It's shown on the far right doors, I believe, what the salon entrance is. But in the concept of the design, we would just center it more in the location where the middle Reed Brown sign would be, like the artwork when we prepared for it here. So it would kind of space in between the two doors as to not encroach too much onto the Mr. Nice Guy tenant space.
I have a question. On the Reed Brown sign towards the, I guess it'd be the north side of the building, doesn't that kind of curve in? So can't you not center it there? Because doesn't the building kind of turn back a little?
The building has a little bit of turn. That's, I think, where originally they might have had like the third tenant that was on their space. But what we'll do is we'll center the Reed Brown's location between the edge where the break on the wall is and the line to the tenant space to the left. Actually, I apologize. I've got the one of the store managers online, and it says that the salon door that they access is the right side door. The middle door is not used.
But that does access their space, the 1061.
Yes, the 1061, it goes through the right side door.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anybody else have discussion? Member Pollard?
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with staff comments that the signs don't really, they're completely, there's no relationship between the two. I'm wondering, and, even not only in terms of the size and shape, but also in terms of how they're fabricated. So I think one's going to be more, perceived to be lit differently, as well as kind of the size and shape. So the two signs are different sizes, height as well. One's 28, one's 33. So, I mean, it feels like they should be on separate buildings. So I'm wondering if the Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm assuming that blue is a corporate color that they need to use, but I'm wondering if they could essentially box it or box both to kind of be a little bit more congruent together.
The trademark for Mr. Nice Guy is that conceptual design, which they have, I believe, their brand and trademark for it. I can adjust the Mr. Nice Guy sign to, instead of being front lit, we can do it to a push-through lettering, so the white mimics the push-through effects like the Reed Brown. They've used that concept in other locations, and I can talk to the owners about that change as long as, the master sign program allows for a channel letter design or the push-through concept. So when we apply for the permit for the Mr. Nice Guy sign directly, we can advise them use a push-through face just like the Reed Brown construction to mirror the fabrication of both signs and the illumination effects.
Right.
Okay. No. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Okay, Member Thompson.
That wasn't me. I think you were talking to yourself.
Oh, I'm getting an echo sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are in discussion, so Member Thompson.
No, it's not me. I don't have anything to say at this point.
Okay. Member Walsh.
I have no comments or questions.
Member Dozy.
My feeling is we're looking kind of as a sign program for the building, and yet I think it's lacking some congruity between the two signs. I know they're different businesses, but there's some elements that need to be brought together.
Okay. And Member Lockyer?
No additional comments other than what the other folks have said that I agree with.
Okay. And I'm in agreement also. It's very challenging when you have such distinct logos for businesses to make them work as part of a singular sign program. So I think, though, there needs to be some sort of uniformity between the two, and whether they're boxed in or whether they're push-through letters. But I think the way it's currently presented, it's not a well thought out a sign program for this building. So, a motion? Okay, I'll make a motion. I think we should let staff work with the applicant. And let me ask, before I make the motion, staff, is this something that you're comfortable with working, that they should come back with a new sign?
Staff can work with the applicant based on the direction you've given, and he's also indicated that he is willing to make some adjustments to it. So based on your direction and their willingness to make the changes, we're comfortable with making those revisions administratively.
And then it'll just go to Planning Commission.
Correct.
Okay. So I will move to approve with the comments we made about trying to create a more uniform sign program. And that staff will work with the applicant. Second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Do we want to take a 5 or 10 minute break? It's now
Yes.
10 after 7.
Sure do.
All right. We'll resume at, why don't we say 7:15, 7 minutes from now.
Sounds good.
Okay. We will now move on to item number 5, which is Palo Fielo Estates for minor architectural review approval to convert 3,600 square feet of the existing landscape, install landscape lighting on the East Laverne Way frontage at 2082 Lagarta Way. May we have a staff report?
Good evening. As introduced, this is a proposed landscape conversion project at Palo Fielo Estates. The Palo Fielo Estates is a condominium complex which is located at the northwest corner of East Laverne Way and South Calle Palo Fielo. The size of the condominium complex is about 4.20 acres, and the project will take place in the landscape area on the East Laverne Way frontage. These are the images of the existing site. As you see, the site has an exposed soil with boulders at the center. There are existing Mexican fan palms and one olive tree. The project proposes the installation of desert landscape in the area which was previously landscaped with turf, and the project area is approximately 3,600 square feet. And with regards to landscape conversion project, any project that involves less than 5,000 square feet is typically reviewed by staff. However, a landscape conversion project may be referred to the AAC if staff determines that taking such an action is appropriate. This is a proposed landscape plan. The project proposes the retention of the existing Mexican fan palms and olive tree, and then also the project proposes the installation of a variety of plant materials, which include variegated fountain agave, Mexican glass tree, gopher plant, and night blooming cactus, and so forth. In addition to the new landscape, the applicant is proposing the installation of landscape lighting, which includes directional lights and well lights. According to the justification letter submitted by the applicant is aiming to deliver design that is congruent and most compatible with the complex's overall design and architecture, beautiful, unique, functional, and economical design that works in unison with the architecture and the functionality of the complex. And the applicant came up with a design to avoid a cookie-cutter appearance. Based on the submitted plans, staff finds that the project will reduce the site's water demand for landscape maintenance. Project will preserve the existing streetscape, and the proposed plant materials will add a uniqueness and character to the site. The plan also proposes a consistency in the use of plant materials and the treatments throughout the site, and the materials recommended in the Lush and Efficient Garden book are proposed for this project. Staff has a few design concerns. The first one is that the proposed design lacks a strong composition, and then also the treatment of the driveway entrance appears detached from the rest of the project area. And this is a continuation from the findings too, but project generally meets the required findings, and applicant mentioned that this design was created to preserve originality. However, staff finds that the originality and composition are two different elements that are required for creating a successful landscape, and the composition can be improved by rearranging the plant materials without compromising the originality of the design. And for this reason, staff recommend AAC approve the project subject to conditions of approval included in the staff report. This concludes staff presentation, and the three individuals representing the Palo Fielo Estates are available this evening. This concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Do we have any questions for staff on this?
I have one question.
Yes, Member Thompson.
Is the ground cover by the driveway where it shows the purple plants, is that different than what is going to be the ground cover on the rest of it?
Yes.
Color different.
Yes, that is correct. So the background for the majority of planting area will be landscaped with a desert gold decomposed granite. For the entry area, the application of a Copper Canyon crushed rocks, which are a little bit larger, they're going to be installed in the entrance area.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Narco, on their plan, and it's just out of curiosity, they have the number 6 that's just above the property line. Do you know what, on each side of the parking? Do you know what that is?
No, I do not know what they are. And applicant.
Is it the count? Yeah.
No, the count actually, the one side has 10. So the 9 or 6 does not match. I apologize. I'm not sure what the number represents.
No, it's not a big deal. All right. All right, do we have the applicant present?
Hi, this is Rod.
Hi, Rod. This is staff with the Architectural Advisory Committee. I'm calling to let you provide your public comments. If you are listening live, please turn on the volume of your TV and you can begin now.
Sure. Hey, hello, everybody. Hi, staff and committee. Thank you very much for hearing us out here this evening. In general, I wanted to just say, too, that I read, reading the report, and we appreciate, the analysis and the report and the recommendations and the findings. That's very productive to us, and it helps us a lot, actually, as we pursue, what we're trying to accomplish here. This is my second term here as president of the HOA, and we're trying to make some meaningful and substantial improvements to our community. This project is an important one because this is defines our community. It faces out to Laverne, to the main street, and it's what the public sees. And so we view this as an important project, and we've been putting a lot of time and effort into this and taking it very seriously. So we're excited about doing this and getting this project implemented and completed. In general, I agree with the recommendations that have been made. I think those are good and they're valid, and we're fine with implementing the recommendations, although I do have one question and one comment on them. And is this the time for me to ask you this question and comment?
Sure.
This for staff or for the committee?
Your question for staff or the committee?
Well, I guess it would be, it's just, for clarification of one of the recommendations, along with a comment though, because I wanted to let everybody know here that we were, the driveway plans had come up, talking about the driveway there. So we have a plan and a goal here. I don't know, when you went out to review it, there are small 3-foot block walls that border that angled area, and when you're looking at the plan, the vertical north-south line that's in the parking area, there is also a 3-foot block wall there that's existing. So our idea and plan was to, rather than typically what we would do is we'd landscape these things as the seasons change. We change out the plants, flowers in when they'll live, and you change them out in the summertime, the traditional thing. And along Palo Fiero, all the houses and residences along Palo Fiero have this very same, very small planter area in front of the block wall. And we wanted to keep this area consistent with those. We're thinking in the big picture here, we're going to keep all those consistent. And those are the plants that we are choosing, something that stays all year round, a consistent plant, rather than changing them out with the seasons. So I don't know if that makes a difference to you or not in the scope of this project, but to us, that remains consistent with what we want to do along all the homes on Palo Fiero. We haven't implemented that yet, but that's what the idea is. So that's the only thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, and just the only thing asking to get some clarification from you, on those.
Okay. Well, before we start asking you questions, I'll let staff work with you on that. But I'll if you're finished with your presentation, I'll open it up to see if there's anybody from the public who's called in for comment.
Sure, that's good. I'm fine. I'm done. Thank you.
All right.
Do
we have anybody?
There's no other public comments aside from there's two other individuals as a part of the applicant team that would like to speak.
Okay, well, let's hear them.
Sure, and basically you can just and Barb is she's the chair of our architectural landscape committee. I don't think you really need to talk to her unless you want to. Okay. Paul Ortega is our landscape architect, and if you'd like some comments from him, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I think we'll probably give Paul a call just so he can comment about the design.
Sure. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. A little bit of questions to the applicant.
Mr. Chair, we're going to just give the landscape architect a call right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You have reached Paul Ortega. Please leave me a message after the... You have reached Paul Ortega. Please leave me a...
Hi, it's Rod again.
Hi, Rod. Yeah, we just tried. We tried to call Paul, but he wasn't available, so we just figured.
I heard that, and I'm online with him here now too. We've been online, so let me just email him and real quick if you don't mind, and I'll see if
we should start our discussion while we wait.
Okay.
I've got a couple of comments. When I look at the street view of this particular project, and I get right in front of the gate here, I guess it's not the gate, it's this kind of driveway entry. There's a lot of things missing from the plan here. this is just one particular area, but, I see those two low walls that the HOA folks were pointing out that are closer to the street and kind of appear to run on an angle and then flank the parking area. Some of those seem to be trying to capture some trash cans. Trash cans appear to be maybe 4 feet tall and the wall's only 3. I see that on the right and the left. But it's just dangerous having these Zoom calls because I can just look at all this stuff on Street View that we didn't normally get to see. FYI. But so anyway, and then I'm faced with, when I'm looking at the street, and I guess I'm looking north here. I won't say north arrow on this plan, but I believe that's correct. There's this sort of 4-inch high slump stone wall, it looks like, in front of these natural stone, I guess, pilasters, really elongated sections of wall at both the east and the west end of this south-facing facade of the building. It's a relatively nice-looking facade, very period architecture here. And yet these Mexican fan palms are these sort of broomsticks in front of them as part of the design here, that these are being maintained and not replaced with anything. And the underplanting is not shown at all along the building here, along the street's facade. So here there's this arrival sequence in this motor court. The 4.5, 5 foot tall planting that's there now, flanking this entry in front of these lower walls, is being removed. And what's proposed here is something much lower that I don't even think will quite reach the 3 foot high mark that the plantings that are there currently achieve. And I just feel like this plan's sort of not very well drawn. It's missing a lot of information. The buildings aren't captured. I can't tell where the walkways are, what we're actually landscaping here. I see that a few of the palm trees are called out, but then there's this sort of clump. As I work my way from the east to the west, there's a palm tree at the corner, and there's this clump of what appears to be palms on the plan. That's not at all what I see in reality here. It appears to be almost like a ficus tree in the middle of this turf area. And then as I continue to work my way left towards that sort of motor court parking entry there's 2 more palms on the plan. I see that here also. But again, these are just broomsticks, and they're not being underplanted in any way, the palm trees in particular. I'm seeing palms on the plan, but doesn't seem to be reality. The building, there's a little patch of this magenta rectangle and a circular dot. I'm just focusing on this eastern half of the proposed landscape plan here. I'm not sure that I see the beautification in this project with what's being proposed here. I don't get it. I can just continue, but I'm going to just repeat myself in front of that motor court and along the west side of the project here. I can't quite tell what else is being proposed either, aside from just this south-facing facade. I feel like the homeowners association representative talked about wanting to do something on Palo Fiero, but I can't quite tell what. There's no plan to review or even consider some kind of phasing plan. I just feel like this is an incomplete proposal. Okay. I'm not quite sure why we're talking about it.
Okay. Staff, do we have anybody from the applicant? Have we been able to get a hold of the landscape architect?
Architect, he contacted me. This is Rod, and he said that that he couldn't pick up the call. He was trying to pick up the call and was able to pick it up, and he requested maybe could he call into you. There's a way that he could call into you. I don't know if that's possible.
No, we have to call him.
Okay. why don't you just try calling him again and let's just see if it works out.
Okay.
And I can make a comment to your last, to Councilman's comments here. Oh, he's calling me on the other line here, gentlemen. Please hang on. Let me see what he says. Hello, Paul. Yeah, okay, they're going to try and call you again here right now. There's no way that you can call them. They have to call you, so they're going to attempt another call. Okay, thank you. Okay, he's waiting, guys. Please try again.
Okay, thanks.
This is Paul Ortega.
Hi, Paul. This is David at the AAC meeting. You are live at the meeting, and you are able to make a presentation if you'd like.
Thank you.
Let me see what he says.
And
Okay, I'm here.
Turn down your volume on your TV.
All right, I'm here. Hello.
Yes. Would you like to make a presentation?
I am watching. Yes. So where would you like to begin?
If you just want to go over the design and the concept.
Yeah. And I'll try to address some of Sean's comments, or we can wait until we get to that point with the rest of the group. So the main concept is that we have the spine going down the two sides of the main, the property is, or this strip is kind of broken up into three sections. We have the west side area where we had a majority of turf, and then we have the two little planting beds that surround the parking area, and then we also have on the opposite side, on the east side, where you also have the entry sign. We have a similar area where there had been turf at one point. And then in each of those two larger sections, we have the spine that runs down the middle, that's slightly raised, has boulders, it has the cacti, it has the Mexican grass trees. These are the larger elements in the landscape outside of the trees, and they're supposed to be those. That's why the lighting is sort of focused on those middle sections, or that spine. And then on the perimeter, which would be close to the sidewalk, and on the corners of those two sections, we have the lower plantings. We have the fountain agave, have the gopher plant. And then in the area where we have around the parking area, those planting beds are pretty narrow. And as Rod was saying earlier, right, the way they've been used in the past is for annual color. And the community had decided to move away from that, and they wanted to use perennials instead. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're proposing to do at those two little planting beds. But again, they're quite narrow. So, to try to do, to try to incorporate more of the similar kind of plant material that we have in the larger sections would be quite difficult, because they'd be very crowded together. But we went with the smaller desert perennials. And we also feel like that's really not the main entrance to the property. The main entrance is really on Lagarda, which is a private road. And then you also have homes that in the community that face Palo Fiero. This little parking area that's in the front really just services a few homes that are hidden just to the north, that are behind that wall that you can see from some of the images. To address some of Sean's comments before we get into the rest of the questioning, there was a ficus tree there at one time. It's no longer there. It hasn't been there for a while. This red line and that red dot, that magenta that he referred to, is actually in the key. And at one time, there was bougainvillea in those locations. And that's what those colors represent. For some reason, which I can't speak to because I wasn't consulted on that, nor was part of that conversation, but that bougainvillea was removed. And I don't know if the association has plans to replant that with some other type of wall covering or not. But that wasn't the original design intent. It was supposed to be the bougainvillea was supposed to remain in place along there. I don't know if there's anything else I can tell you at the moment regarding this, but I'll look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions for the applicant?
I do.
Okay. Member Lockton?
Yeah. So along the building, and I guess if this plan is to scale here, then those planting beds out front flanking that parking area look like ample room to plant some other material. I guess my question is, how come there's not? And what I'm seeing there on the street view are some pretty large hedges with some annual planting in front of them, some light bollards. And that's just there. The other thing is that the height with those seem to mitigate where trash cans are being stored. So what, if anything, is being done to sort of screen these trash containers now? And then back to my point, along that building, there's just in that parking area alone, there's 3 palm trees and some pretty thick looking, in the street view here, but bougainvillea, some sort of low aloe plant, occasional rock, and this brick sort of edge banding. And then yet on the plan, nothing's shown. I can see clearly that the magenta rectangles called out on the legend here, but it doesn't quite align with what I'm seeing here along the building, sort of flanking this entry. So on both the east side and the west side, there's a patch of bougainvillea in front of the building, and then no other planting in front of the building at all. And I'm wondering why.
Well, I think I just explained that it was supposed to remain as part of the plan. I can't, you'll have to ask the applicant about why it was removed. But
there's no planting along the building. This is the landscape plan that we're supposed to be reviewing along this particular facade of the building. So, why? Any reason why it's planted along the building?
I don't understand your question, Sean.
So to the right, that's where you're showing on your plan that there's bougainvillea there. It says existing with proposed replacement plan. I'm not sure what that means. But then is part of the scheme to enhance this building and the look of this facade from the street? And if so, we heard from the HOA representative, and yet I'm not seeing the enhancement. So I'm asking, am I missing? Or why? How come?
I can't address why the bougainvillea was removed. There have been conversations with the community about coming up with a long-term replacement plan for bougainvillea as it's perhaps dying out or becomes unruly or for some other reason. So that was a part of a larger conversation. So as far as this particular application, that comment should probably have been removed because I guess it's causing some confusion. But as far as why it was removed at this point, I can't answer that.
How about those other questions? Trash cans that planting in the front of the block walls, planting in the front of that central building parking area?
I'm going to have to defer to the client for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Paul. Paul, the applicant referenced creating kind of an identity to the project with this proposed landscape renovation. And I was wondering if you could take us through your planned with some of the materials you selected, on the mounds and using the building as a backdrop and kind of what your thought was, to what identity you want to bring this back to complement the architecture.
I'm sorry, is this Tom?
Yes.
Yeah, it was really hard to hear you. Kind of got fuzzy there, but I think what you're asking me is sort of like, look at based on what we're looking at right now here tonight, how does some of this translate into what might happen in the community going forward? Is that correct?
Yes, and the identity for this, frontage, as Rod, the representative, alluded to, creating an identity and how your plant selection and locations reinforce that.
Well, what we had done initially, in initial conversations with the community, we sort of came up with some general plant palettes for different parts of the community that could be considered as the community goes forward with making landscape improvements. And so some of these materials also appear in other parts of the community. So, for example, there are 2 pools on the property that sort of we created an identity for the areas around the pools. Some of these materials appear in those plant palettes. And then each of the properties not only faces out towards the street, each of the individual homes, whether it be Lagardo or Palo Fiero. There are the 2 that are in the middle by that one parking area that we're looking at right now. They don't really look out into the street at all. They look more out internally. But then the backside, all those homes that are on Palo Fiero and Lagardo, then have a back door or back way kind of facing out into the interior. And so there's a plant palette that sort of is the envelope around the edge of those buildings in the interior. So some of those homes have walkways behind them. And they have also AC units that are placed in that sort of general area. So there was a plant palette that we came up with to do walls and to do screening along walls and to maybe help mitigate the sight of some of those AC units. And anyway, so there's that plant palette. And then there was the plant palette that we kind of see a little bit of here around the parking spaces. Rod made reference to how on Palo Fiero you have these similar kinds of short garden walls that are on these triangular spaces. They're really quite narrow. And so I think to Sean's question, the area along the street there, the parking is wider than the others on Palo Fiero, but we were trying to keep that look consistent so that if you were starting on the north side of Palo Fiero and coming down and came around the corner, every time you saw one of those little walled off areas, if you will, that you would see you'd experience a similar kind of plant palette. And even if you come around onto the other side of Lagardo, those planting spaces are much more generous. They don't really have the same confinement with those short walls. They do have some walls, but they tend to be set back quite a bit further from the private street. And so we were using similar kinds of plants there. So those were sort of the three plant packs that we came up with. The sort of the perennial replacement plant palette, the pool plant palette, which incorporates some of the plants that we see out here on the in the main sections of turf that are we're proposing have actually already been removed, and then the plant palette that sort of is on that interior space between the buildings and the pool areas.
Okay. And then the planting design that you have proposed, it appears that you have the taller, like serious cactus in the back, and then the Mexican grass trees creating a pattern in the center, and then a foreground plant.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Kim, I have a question. Is there any mounding being proposed in this section along Laverne? Or is it all flat?
No, there is some mounding in the section where you see the cacti and the Mexican grass trees and the boulders. That is intended to be mounded. It's not really that much further off the grade. It's probably anywhere from 12 to 15 inches. And you might even be able to see that to some degree in the images that are in the staff report. It's really hard. You're so far, some of these photos are taken quite far back from the opposite side of the road, which is a wide road. So it might be hard to make them out. But if you see some boulders that are sort of in place there already, and that's the area where we're intended to do the mounding.
Okay. And then, go ahead. Sorry.
Just a note for David. I got a request from Rod to call him back. I don't know if you have the opportunity to call him now or if you want to wait for me when I'm finished.
So they're done with questions.
Well, I have one more question. So the area, when you come in the parking area in the middle, and as Sean was talking about, there's planting in front of I guess those are some homes. They've got 3 palm trees and some bougainvillea and some other stuff. Is that, that's part of the common area of the homeowners association, is that right?
That's correct.
And this plan proposed for that area?
I'm sorry, what was that?
In this plan, there's nothing proposed for that area.
There's nothing proposed. This was really originally driven by a application that this particular proposal that we're looking at was driven by an application that the HOA made to the Desert Water Agency for turf replacement. So that's why we didn't address that area at this time.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we'll open it up for discussion. Member Pauline, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I certainly agree with some of Sean's earlier comments. I think removing the tall shrubs on either side of that wall is going to expose trash cans in that area, which I don't want to see necessarily. I tend to agree. It does feel just kind of haphazard a bit. It doesn't really feel like it's a real thought composition overall. And my other kind of comment is it looks like the ground cover they've chosen to go on side of this parking entrance is a crushed rock, and then they're planting very delicate kind of daisies in it, which feel odd to me. So, Tom, I'm sure you probably have more of an opinion on that than me, but it feels weird to have a very delicate flower in crushed rock. That's my comment.
Thank you. Member Lockman.
Did you say Lockyer?
I did.
Yeah. So I feel like the plan's incomplete and it's difficult to review. Incomplete in the presentation and incomplete in the plant material and what it's actually trying to address here. So another couple examples I didn't bring up, but I can't tell, when I look at the street view, I can see really clearly some walkways, buildings, windows, doors, trash areas. there's things worth pointing out and noting that where landscape could be integrated nicely with the architecture. And yet I look at the plan and I don't see any of that integration or correlation between the architecture and the landscape. And then with the plant palette, I just don't understand. I'm not quite seeing the beautification here. And if it's not about beautification, it's simply about turf replacement, then let's talk about turf replacement. I think there's a requirement for a certain percentage of coverage in order to get credit for a turf replacement. And I'm not quite seeing that here either. And I don't know that the existing palm trees that look like they're at about the end of their lifespan, and again, I'll say they look like broomsticks to me. I don't quite see how the canopy even on those counts at all for what we're getting coverage for here. One of them, I just want to point out one more thing. It says 707 square feet of coverage for the olive tree. And that's a big olive tree. That's a 4-car garage olive tree. And I'm not seeing that either. I don't know. I'm kind of, I don't understand this one.
Okay. Member Josie.
You know, I see in the plan that's presented the patterns that the designer is trying to create, you know, with the taller plant material in the back, the Sirius cactus, and then the grass trees. But I think to pull it off, I don't think you need a lot of material, but you would have to use some very large material, more specimen size material. And as Sean said, using the building kind of as a backdrop and coming up with a design that would complement some of the features of the architecture, you know, that are coming off the building, or silhouetting the plants against the building with lighting. And I don't think we're seeing now with the types of plants and the sizes that it has that strength to it. Even, you know, larger boulders, if what's out there is what's proposed to be used, they're kind of just sprinkled around and they're not large enough to carry, you know, it could be a very simple design, but I think it needs to be a very strong design that includes much larger specimen material.
Okay, thank you. Member Dan Thompson?
Yeah, I kind of agree with all the comments that I've seen. And as far as the boulders are there, they look more like just larger rocks. I don't know that they're really landscaping boulders. They seem rather kind of insignificant for the plan. And the driveway, the thing that kind of glares at me is that those rectangle parts where the ground cover changes so much, so drastically, it seems like such a hard line. It just, I don't know if that was intended or not, but when I'm looking at the plan, it just sticks out and it doesn't seem to make sense to me at all. It's not cohesive at all with trying to incorporate what's going on. Or I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me, the whole thing, honestly.
Okay. Member Walsh.
I suppose the good news in all of this is that, you know, the architecture kind of provides a springboard to a certain extent, you know, with its symmetry and its super simplification and things like that. And I would agree with Tom Dozy that it calls for something that would be of appropriate scale, strong, bold, and very simplified, and that could work. And it's also, you know, you perceive this property kind of like from the boulevard effect. It's not done at a close-up pedestrian level. But there are these quirky things that do come out of the architecture in spite of that, and that is that this little, you know, symmetric driveway in the center, it looks like you're kind of, you know, entering something grand, but that only serves a couple of the units there. Whatever. Anyway, and I'm just not sure that the graphics are necessarily expressing something that would be that simple and bold.
Okay, thank you. I'm pretty much in agreement with the comments. I think, you know, the building with the bougainvillea gone provide a pretty much blank slate. You've got these essentially blank walls. And I just don't see the layering, the drama, the variety that would really fulfill the potential of what this could look like. I think the boulders need to be a variety, a wider variety of sizes. The way they look like they're planned, it looks too regular in their placement, and there's not clustering. So I think I'm in agreement, and I think it really needs to be rethought and resubmitted. So I'll be so bold to say that I think we deny this. Staff, do you know, they mentioned the turf replacement. Do you know what their timeline on the turf replacement is to qualify?
No, I do not know. We have to refer the question to the applicant.
Are they still on the line?
Yes. Paul, can you respond to the question about turf replacement?
No, that's you're gonna have to get Rod back on the line. I can't.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if we could ask we can call the other applicant if you'd like.
Well, I don't know if it really change what we're going to do with this, but I do want to be sensitive in some way to their timeline. So yeah, why don't you call them?
Hi there, it's Rod.
Hi, Rod. You're back online, and we're live with the committee. Lost him.
So, Rod, I have a question about the timing on the turf replacement program.
Sorry, we lost him. We have to get him back on.
Sorry.
Are you there? This is Rod.
Yeah, sorry we lost you, but go ahead.
Okay, all right, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much. I wanted to just clarify a couple of things, if I could, on some questions that came up. First, I'll address the bougainvillea that were against the structure. We just recently painted.
Rod, your time is up. I just have a quick question for you regarding the turf replacement program timing for you.
Sure.
When do you have this in to qualify?
Yeah, the Desert Water Agency has given us an extension, and I'm not sure what that date is, but in lieu of everything that's been happening, with our current situation, they've been very, very flexible with this. So I would just anticipate that they would give us, another extension to this. I think it was like the end of this month is when our current date was going set to expire.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So I'll still stick with my motion to deny and to come back, and staff can work with them on trying to adapt their plan to our comments. And I would also just like to add that although it's not part of the turf replacement, that there be an overall master plan that includes the parking area, the landscape areas in the parking area, as well as the screening of trash. And it may not be part of this application, but it should be part of an overall plan for them.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We move on to item number 6, which is Hayward, Shaysboro, The second, on behalf of Harvest House of Cannabis, for minor architectural review approval to paint the primary elevation, install new signage in an existing cannabis dispensary facility located at 312 North Palm Canyon Drive. Staff, when we have a report.
Yes. As introduced, this is a proposed exterior alterations to a cannabis facility and the installation of new signage at 312 North Palm Canyon Drive. The project site is located at the northeast corner of East Amado Road and North Palm Canyon Drive. And the project area is highlighted on the right side of the screen. And this is the project area viewed from North Palm Canyon Drive. And it's just a portion of the entire building. The subject site is a two-story multi-tenant commercial building in a Spanish/Mediterranean architectural style. The building was constructed in 1972, and the facade is painted in multiple colors and staggered with different roof types and architectural treatment. The application proposes to repaint the primary elevation in white. It's a Sherman Williams arcade white, and apply a coat of yellow paint, Decisive yellow, as an accent, and install 3 new signs. And this application is in front of you today because any proposed exterior changes to cannabis facility requires review and approval by the Architectural Advisory Committee and the City Council. With regards to the proposed signage, the review ends at the AAC. The application proposes to apply a coat of arcade white paint and apply a Decisive yellow as an accent as depicted on the plan. The property has an existing sign program which was implemented in 2002, and the project proposes the installation of permanent wall sign on the street-facing elevation. The proposed sign is an illuminated sign with a painted metal cabinet and acrylic push-through letters. And a similar signage with similar construction is proposed for the wall of the landing area. And the application also proposes the installation of applied vinyl graphics on the entrance door. Staff finds that the proposed signage conforms to the applicable sign program regulations. White paint is more compatible with the architectural style of the building compared to the current beige. And the project proposes a desert-neutral color palette. And the proposed accent colors, such as yellow and blue, are consistent with the existing accent colors. And staff also finds that the proposed Decisive yellow accent will add vibrancy and a modern touch to the building, which is located in downtown within the resort overlay zone, and which is appropriate for the area. Staff has a design concern, that is the inconsistency in the paint color between the proposed arcade white and the existing off-white light beige exterior wall color of the adjacent covered porch. For this reason, staff recommends conditions of approval, which requires a new white paint to match the color of the adjacent covered porch. Based on these findings, staff recommends AAC to approve the proposed signage as submitted and recommend approval of the proposed exterior wall repainting work to the City Council, subject to the condition recommended by staff. This concludes the staff presentation, and applicant and the sign maker would like to speak to the Architectural Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Do we have any questions for staff?
I have one. The white.
Member Poland?
The white they're proposing is on the current front of the structure as well, where the Sophia Souvenirs is. Is that the same white or is it a different white?
Are you talking about the white color applied to the covered porch? I'm sorry, I just need a clarification.
So the front of the building where the Sophia Souvenirs is white currently, and they're proposing painting the back of it white where it was beige. Is that the same white as the Sophia Souvenirs,
No, it is not.
or is it a different white?
Yes.
So it's a different white? I'm sorry, I missed that.
The colors, they're not the same color.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I guess it's page, I just want to make sure I understand it, page number 5. Is that just kind of a cutaway view of the yellow, how that's being applied, or I don't quite understand that graphic, or is that just for the sign? It's image 1.4.
Oh.
The image 1.4 in the staff report is a proposed painting. Are you referring to the image 1.4 in the staff report? Am I correct?
Yes,
Okay.
on page.
Yes, that's what the applicant is proposing.
So the whole background wouldn't be yellow, it'd just be a portion, or it's going to be
Yes,
white?
that is correct. So a majority of the elevation will be painted in arcade white, and the applicant is proposing to apply this yellow accent over it.
At that particular angle as shown?
That is correct.
Okay.
Norco, Chris, the sign, the landing sign, where does in the sign guidelines, that is an allowable sign, but how does that qualify?
According to the sign program, the sign installation is allowed at the location. So that's the reason why the applicant is able to propose the sign installation at the location for the business.
Okay, and the size within the guidelines.
Could you please repeat the question? Thank you.
Now, the size they're proposing, which is 4 feet wide by 18 inches high, that meets the guidelines.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff? We'll hear the applicant then.
Hello.
Hi, is this Hayward?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Hayward. This is David. We're live at the Architectural Advisory Committee. Your item is up and you are able to provide your comments at this time. If you're listening to the video live, please turn the volume down.
Actually, I am. I'm no longer with the company. They had a round of layoffs on Friday, so I'm no longer with Harvest.
Okay, I'll try the other applicant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awkward.
This is Jessica. Can I help you?
Hi, Jessica. This is staff at the City of Palm Springs Architectural Advisory Committee. We have you listed.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we have you listed as the contact for the Hayward Cheeseboro Harvest House of Cannabis application, and we wanted to see if you were ready to provide public comment on your item.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm watching. Yes, sir. I'm ready.
Okay, great. So if you could just turn on the volume and begin your comments. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm ready for any questions you may have. My name is Jessica with Swain Sign Company, and we would be installing the signage for Harvest. Absolutely, yes, I'm watching. Yes, sir, I'm ready.
Okay, great. So if you just turn on the volume and begin your comments. Thank you.
Hi.
Mr. Chair, she can answer questions if you have any. I think you're muted, Mr. Chair.
You're muted.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Is the applicant available to answer the question about only the sign or the painting of the building as well?
And try and answer questions in regards to the painting. I did receive a comment from the client, and he did agree that, and this is a direct quote, if you would require them to match the adjacent, I think it's an adjacent tenant, they would be open to that.
Okay. Any other questions? You may not be able to answer this, but I'm just curious, the rationale behind the diagonal slash between the two colors, the white and the yellow, and its location.
Well, I think what they're trying to do is just do a sort of an architectural element that draws attention to the business, just as a matter of standing out without, constructing something, so attracting attention with paint.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have questions? If not, we'll open up to discussion. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Let's see. Member Walsh, how about you?
Yeah, in reviewing it, it did catch my eye, and I don't find it attractive in terms of the slice of paint color there. The rest of it in terms of the sign size and placement is compatible with the guidelines. That's fine, but it's just the paint color kind of really, I wouldn't do it.
Okay. Member Thompson?
I agree with John completely. I have nothing else to add.
Okay. Member Lockyer?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Member Dozy?
Looking at the facade, I think there might be some areas where accent color could be placed, whether it's in the eyebrows of the windows and doors where it's set. But the way it's applied now, I don't find it acceptable.
Okay. And Member Poline?
Yeah, I think the white feels a bit stark to me, and I think toning it down to match the existing facade could be a little bit better, although I don't know if it'll contrast with the yellow they're trying to do. I agree the yellow feels a little arbitrary, but I think that's kind of what they're going for. So it's paint.
So I have a couple of, I too think that the yellow flash is a little arbitrary in its location, and I had an idea that I don't know that it's really improves it, but if they shifted the slash over so it aligned with the leg of the V in the sign, it might make a little bit more sense because you're picking up that angle of the V. But overall, I'm not really in favor of it. The other concern I have is the scale of this building is pretty small, and it just seems inundated with signage. And I know that they are within the guidelines, but if you look at the stairwell as an example, on the left side you have recycles with a big sign, and then you're going to have right behind that, just to the right of it, their 4-foot wide sign, and below that you have a sign which is, I assume, for the dance studio. I don't know if that's permitted or not. And then it just seems like it's the overrun of signage on this small space. So I don't know if staff. I just have concerns about it just looking really, really cluttered. So I'll put a question to staff. Can we reduce the size of the sign, the landing sign? Is that within our purview?
Mr. Vice Chair, what we might do is we could just verify that those other signs are actually permitted, and if not, that we bring them into conformance with the sign program, and hopefully that would reduce or minimize the amount of signage that is applied to the windows. But in terms of the other signs, they do comply with the sign program, so we are somewhat limited in terms of the size and locations.
So staff will look at recycles as well as the dance studio signage and just see. And again, it looks like on the underside of that landing, there's some other sign hanging. I don't know what that is, but you'll look into see if all of that is permitted.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? No? We have a motion?
I have one question before the motion is, does the sign program and the paint go together, or would those be two separate items?
They are separate items. So okay. The Architectural Advisory Committee makes the final determination for the signage, whereas the exterior painting project will continue to the City Council for the final review and approval.
Okay. So do you want to approach it as two different motions?
Yes.
Have a motion. Anybody?
I'll make a motion for approval of the signage that includes the request of staff to review the other signs and the landing sign within the project.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. And now a motion about the paint. Member Thompson?
I knew you were going to pick on me. I'll make a motion to decline the paint, honestly. I'm not in favor of it.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you very much. With that, it will conclude our business. the agenda. Is there any new business?
Are we, just a question for staff, are we offline or is this still public forum at this point of today's meeting?
The meeting is broadcast live and it is posted online.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for staff. Is there a way to return if you want them?
Sorry, you cut out a little bit.
Yeah, the package that we received, do you want them back? And if so, is there a way to return them to you?
We would just ask that they be placed in your recycling bin.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? With that, we will.
Sorry, Mr. Vice Chair, I think we lost you for a second. Go ahead.
No, I was just asking if you had any comments.
Just that right now the city is still undertaking the general plan update. So if you are able to visit psgeneralplan.com, we have a new survey that we're asking people to participate in, and there was a press release about that as well. So we encourage the members of the public to participate in that survey. It will help us as we undertake the update to the general plan. And that's all of my comments.
Okay. With that, we will adjourn at 8:29. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.